Hey, it's Dan again, and welcome back to Unified Gaming. Today I have a series of highlights of Soulbones in action, both in Battlegrounds as well as a duel. Now, whilst the footage is playing, I want to have a chat about Magicka Necromancer and how I feel its performance so far in PvP. I've been playing it for over a month now, and so I want to talk about both the strengths and the weaknesses, and how it stacks up to the other classes. Now, I'd like to make it very clear that these are my opinions, and if you disagree, then let me know in the comments below. And before we start, if you enjoy the footage or the discussion, then hit that like button, and if you want to see more content, then subscribe and turn on the bell notification. Now let's jump right in. So what do I think about the Necromancer so far? Well, there are many good things about it. The big thing I've taken away from Necromancer is that it's actually really fun to play. Out of all the classes in the game, it's probably one of the funnest classes I've ever played. And that's saying something, because I've played this game for about 3 years now, so that is obviously quite impressive that ZeniMax's been able to make a class feel that enjoyable. I also think that it's rather tanky. Now, as a damage dealer, obviously you can be a bit squishy, but the Necromancer just has everything you need to stay alive in sort of difficult situations. It's got sort of a good armor buff with a unique sort of flavour to it. The heals are incredibly strong, especially the Spirit Mender. Kind of sort of put that on, it just gives you lots of burst heals. You also have obviously a really strong burst heal itself that gives you armor on top. And then the ultimates do seem rather unique as well. Obviously the Resurrect ult for group play, the Colossus as well for group play. So overall it kind of seems a pretty well thought out class in many instances. It does however have a few sort of issues, which we'll go through in a moment. I also think that it actually has really high ult gen as well. Now if you compare it to something like a Magicka Warden or a Magicka Nightblade, the ult gen is kind of on par with that, if not slightly better. Especially when you sort of pair 2 or 3 of them up at once. So ult gen wise, it's really good. Overall though, I do think it's kind of a bit clunky and is sort of lacking some sort of key parts that kind of make the class feel it doesn't live up to its potential. And that's obviously in the PvP sort of scenario. In PvP, in PvE, they're doing really well. Now, so the thing that I find a bit clunky about it is that the burst on the Necromancer is really awkward. You obviously have to fire the blast bones, then that has to then pathfind to the target, by which way they can just outrun it in many instances, or the blast bones runs the wrong way, or it gets to a ledge and then the target jumps off the ledge and it just sort of sits there looking a bit stupid. And then sometimes it gets snared and it doesn't run up to the target, so it's kind of not reliable. When it works, it's really good. When it doesn't work, it's frustrating. Now, some of you obviously you'll probably notice that, and it's kind of a sort of common theme that people have seen from Magicka Necromancer. So I've kind of tried to avoid the AoE sort of version of the Necromancer as well, because I've used it in PTS heavily, and again I found that really clunky too. As a damage dealer, I kind of found that Avid Boneyard synergy, even with Harmony, hits pretty hard, but in the grand scheme of things you couldn't line up any other skill with it easily. And then trying to make it as a dot build, it's kind of hard because all the dots are on the ground, and it kind of locks you to one place, and that's kind of a limitation of the class. I also have noticed that kind of the sustain is a little bit harder than it first appeared. Now I know they did nerf parts of it in PTS, and obviously I did experience that, it was a bit depressing. But I just feel the Necromancer sustains a bit iffy in Battlegrounds. I'm running obviously the regen Munders, I'm a Breton with 2 Magicka glyphs, so I've got 1500 plus regen, plus cost reduction as well from light armor and Breton passives. And even still, there are obviously many times I run out of resources, as you'll see in the footage. So I do feel good there's kind of like an inbuilt sustain problem, because a lot of the passives you can't really take sort of advantage of in PvP. I also think the movement is really slow. Especially if you use that corpse gameplay, it kind of locks you to one place, and generally that's kind of a death sentence, and that's partly why I think stamina in some instances are doing better, because they have access to just more movement, and so they can line of sight better, and the Necromancer struggles to do that really. And I think the ultimates are actually good, so they're good, but they're a bit too expensive. Having used them, you kind of get very little bang for your buck. The Flesh Colossus is good, it hits really hard, but lots of time people move out the way, it's kind of awkward to line up, and then obviously you turn into the Goliath, that makes you really tanky, but damage wise it's terrible, so it kind of either prolongs death or just gives you sort of a get out button, a bit like Cloak. And the Resurrect ult, probably one of the better ones actually for open world, but not so much for Battlegrounds. But again, it's just so expensive, 325 ult is ridiculous. So sort of all in all, I think that the Necromancer does have some issues with it. Now, obviously I've played the game for 2-3 years now, and I think the Necromancer feels like it's a class that was kind of a cross between a Templar and a Sorcerer, in that it's got obviously lots of single target abilities, but it's also got lots of AoE abilities, and as such it's really hard to build a proper build with it. Obviously on my Soulbones build I've moved away from the corpse gameplay and basically focused everything into single target to actually play it as a single target sort of class, so I can actually do damage and create burst, and that seems to work and I get kills with it. But I do feel obviously I would probably have an easier time on, say, a Sorcerer, in all honesty, if I wanted to play that Magicka ranged caster. I also feel that obviously the AoE obviously has lots of potential, but again, when I think about actually the AoE ability of the class and I compare it to other classes, it seems a bit lackluster. Like the Magicka Warden's AoE potential is just phenomenal. Compared to the Necromancer, it just feels really clunky. The Necromancer's static, the Magicka Warden follows the player. Kind of, there's it's got movement and damage. It's kind of exactly what you want. And obviously, as such, I will be making a Magicka Warden and will be posting a build up and some gameplay shortly. So obviously, check that out. As for sort of the movement, as I've sort of mentioned briefly, it's not evasive. It's kind of a class that's very slow and it's almost designed to kind of stand its ground like a Templar or a Dragon Knight. But it doesn't have the same abilities or sort of resistances that those classes have. From its passives, it gets obviously lots of health, but the health just gets eaten up really fast. Having an extra 1,250 health isn't particularly helpful. And then I also find that actually, when you compare its sort of ability to sort of sustain, block, and sort of that kind of melee close quarters combat, the Magicka Dragon Knight just does it better. All of its damage abilities heal you. And then when you look at the sort of Magicka Templar, again, that sits in melee range. It has better sustain, and so you can obviously sustain either block or really big heals, so you can obviously survive in melee range. And the Necromancer doesn't really have that, even if you use the corpse gameplay. So it just feels a little bit sort of lacking, and sort of kind of feel that actually if you went on a Dragon Knight or a Templar, you kind of get more mileage out of the class. And that's kind of what I've really taken away from Magicka Necromancer over the past month or so, is that it's a very enjoyable class, it's a very fun class, but it's probably one of the weaker classes in the game currently. Now, that's just for a damage dealer, and obviously that's my opinions only. As for a healer though, or a tank, it's probably one of the strongest ones. It's got really, really strong heals, really good group heals, and for tanking, the heals on the tank are just ridiculous, as well as the actual abilities it has. So, I kind of just wanted to sort of give a sort of summary of what I think of the Magicka Necromancer so far. Now, we'll still keep playing with it. I've also been working on Stamina Necromancer as well, so obviously for those people who are curious, obviously there is one on the way, so don't worry about that. And I think that's a little bit stronger actually. But obviously I will be making the Magicka Warden as well, because obviously that's a class that I do enjoy playing. I think it's got a lot of potential, and is probably overlooked actually as one of the classes in the game. So obviously I hope you enjoy the sort of video, the discussion. Let me know what you think. Obviously you might have a different opinion to me, that's absolutely fine. But I'd like to know what people think of Magicka Necromancer so far and kind of where it stacks. So if you put in the comments below, and I'll do my best to reply as quick as I can. It's Dan signing off.